What is going on, people? We are Tottenham TV here, back again with another Tottenham update. And as you can see next to me, it is not Ben Daniel in the house. We have got the always phenomenal, the always fantastic Mr. Brian Daigle talking about the Tottenham news over the last few hours, which, you know, we did an update earlier today, but there has been some significant updates from the likes of Gary Jacob and Matt Law about Tottenham's proceedings. But without further ado, Brian from Tottenham and Tour in the building today. How are we doing, Brian?
Well, yesterday I had Ben. Now I complete the set. You say you were doing an update. I was currently watching your recent update when you've asked me to be on this update. So always a pleasure to be with you and Ben, brother.
Fantastic. Appreciate your time as always, Brian. We'll start the update again talking about the main story of the time at the moment, which is about Dominic Solanke. And Gary Jacob is saying that Tottenham are increasingly confident of ending their striker search with Dominic Solanke before the start of the season. The deal would be funded by Richarlison's exit to the Saudi Pro League. Football Insider has just done a little update saying Tottenham are closing in on signing Dominic Solanke. The club are attempting to avoid activating a 65 million release clause by agreeing a lower overall fee, but with a bigger initial payment to Bournemouth for the striker. Look, definitely Dominic Solanke news has been hotting up over the last 48 hours or so. He does seem to be the striker of choice. Does come with a hefty price tag of 65 million. Sorry, well, his release was 65 million. Tottenham looking to do the deal for a bit lower. Striker who scored 19 Premier League goals last season. He played 38 games for a very energetic and surprisingly good Bournemouth side, it's fair to say, last season. Didn't go to the Euros, missed out with the likes of Kane, Watkins, and Ivan Toney being selected ahead of him. But he's definitely a striker in red-hot form coming into this season. And if you take his form since 2020, he's got 94 goal contributions in 157 games, but that's also including his time in the Championship. Do you think Tottenham should be pursuing this deal? Is this a deal that excites you?
I would say that when the deal first broke last Thursday, I was dead against it, and I thought I would not be able to be convinced otherwise. The longer this is drawn on, I'm softening on it. I still would rather Gyökeres, but that's my personal preference. He had a very good season last season, and we've got to remember he did that in a Bournemouth team where obviously he's playing not against or playing alongside the quality he would obviously have at Tottenham. He did have a very good season. I think the biggest thing, which obviously sings to me or appeals to me, that he said he played all 38 games. When is the last time we can say we've had a striker that's been able to do that, including Harry Kane, who's obviously had his injury? So being able to keep fit is a good thing. I still think the price is a big one, and maybe there could be better, but it looks like this is Ange's man. It looks like Ange sees him playing in his system. For me, a winger that can really get quality into him regularly has to come alongside him, but still not 100% sold on it, but I'm softening, let's put it that way. What about you, Sim?
I'm generally excited about the deal just because I think he's a really good profile. And I think that if we're looking for a striker who's big, strong, can actually run in behind, can bully defenders, and is actually a pretty good box finisher, penalty box finisher, and really good at pressing as well, which we saw with his time last season at Bournemouth, then, I mean, I can understand why they're pursuing it. And also I'm thinking about, like, I understand it's a hefty price, but strikers always come expensive, especially strikers who are scoring goals. And if you're looking for a striker of that profile who's in form at the moment, I mean, how many are there right now who are kind of, if we're, obviously no one's guaranteed, right? There's not, you can sign a striker who, we saw that with like Soldado. He like scored 25 goals for 3 seasons in a row in La Liga, and he couldn't hit a barn door when he came here. So you look at Fernando Torres for Chelsea, you know, that would have been, if anything, one of the biggest bankers, you know, of his success, and it didn't work out. So obviously there's no one who's going to be guaranteed success. But if you're looking to mitigate risk in terms of players who are success, you're looking for players who are good, with good track records in big leagues with Premier League experience, with the kind of physical profile of Solanke. I mean, there's not too many out there. You could argue Gyökeres, but only Gyökeres is the same age as Solanke, and last season was his first major big season in a big league. And that was in the Portuguese league, not the Premier League like it was for Solanke. Yes, he did score maybe more goals, but you could say, well, Gyökeres, smashed out in the Championship before then and showed he can do it in England. But then I could say Solanke scored 29 goals a couple of seasons ago in the Championship, and he also smashed out. So I don't see Gyökeres being that much less of a risk, to be honest, apart from the fact that he's playing for a big team in Portugal, so maybe has more of that big team experience and played in Europe as well and did quite well. But I don't see Gyökeres being clearly a better player than Solanke, in my opinion. You could, I guess we'll go into this, touch on this update, and we can go into a wider conversation. Gary Jacob also said that Tottenham also scouted the likes of Ivan Toney, Jonathan David, Lewis Openda, Gyökeres, and Gift Orban before he left for Lyon. So those are the kind of strikers we've been looking, and they all see. Apart from, they seem to be two types. You've got Tony, Gyökeres, and Solanke, who are kind of big target men, like to hold up the ball, penalty box strikers, and then you've kind of got Lewis Openda and Jonathan David and Gift Orban, who are kind of running behind, more pacey, stretching defenders, kind of strikers. So it looks like we've got two different kind of profiles we've been pursuing. But if we're really looking for a big physical presence, I mean, Solanke might be one of the best fits for it, to be honest. And I know it's expensive, but just because he had, up until this point, he hasn't had the most stellar career. Just because in his younger years he had a bit of struggles at Chelsea and Liverpool, doesn't mean he can't be hitting his stride now in his mid-20s. And you only have to look at someone like Ollie Watkins, who's hitting his stride in his late 20s, to see that sometimes strikers hit into form at their own pace. And I think Solanke's coming into his own right now. The season before last, he didn't have the best season, but he was playing under a bit more of a defensive manager in Gary O'Neill. And once a more offensive manager in Raiola came in, he's been thriving. So I'm very positive about the deal. I think it can really work out. Yes, he's not the best striker in Europe, potentially, but maybe you put him in a better team and he could fly even higher than he is right now. There's no reason why he can't improve once he's with better players. So I think, yes, he's a bit of an underwhelming name because he's an English striker who wasn't in the Euros, and he's a striker who essentially failed at Liverpool and Chelsea in his younger years, and he's been at bigger clubs without making a big impact. And you could say in the Premier League itself, he's only had one stellar season. But I think when you look at the context of his career and look at the context of him as a player, I can understand why we're very serious about him.
Yeah, I think you look at it. I think a lot of it with me as well is, and I've said, I look at my Spurs supporting life, and there's always been that one big name striker, whether it be an unknown that we brought in like a Berbatov that went on to be, we know, whether it be a Lineker, a Klinsmann, a Sheringham, a Defoe, a Harry Kane, Garth Crooks, Steve Archibald, these names, illustrious within our fan base, illustrious within our history, and obviously big names. And then you bring in the stadium, the finances it brings in. You were led to believe that the big names will be coming, and Solanke, like it or not, is not a big name, but he is, like we said, the profile that looks like Ange Postecoglou wants. There's two different clear profiles by those players mentioned, and we'll have to wait and see. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him if he is the man, and we're going to have to see what he does. Like I said, as soon as he puts the shot on, I support him, and we'll welcome him with open arms, as will all fans. We will have to wait and see, but I do think this one gets done.
Yeah, I think Solanke, I can understand. I think I can understand him really wanting the move, and I think it makes a lot of sense for him to want this move at this stage of his career. Bournemouth are always a club who use money wisely, and so they may be feeling, look, we can take that 50, 60 million for him and reinvest it in other areas of the squad. And I think it's probably the right time for Solanke to make that step up, and he's probably looking at it as well. having had such a great season and still missing out on the Euros. If he had done that for Tottenham, would he have been on the plane? Probably.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
definitely that. We've seen that before, haven't we? Where the big club and doing it on the big stage certainly will be looked favourably. And maybe if he had got those 19 goals and it was in the Spurs shirt, maybe he would have been on the plane. But obviously, we'll never know.
But in terms of that list, Brian, Tony, David, Openda, Gyökeres, and Orban, where would Solanke rank on that list in terms of strikers you would be most wanting to come to Tottenham?
So let's do it this way. Let's put it the target man ones that you said. Give me the target man ones.
That would be Tony, Gyökeres, and Solanke.
It would be for me, just a personal preference, Gyökeres, Tony, Solanke, but Tony because obviously he has got that something about him. He is a clinical finisher. Again, he did it in the Championship and he had that great season with Brentford before his loan. But just because I'm putting him third there, I'm going purely on my bias for Gyökeres. And I think Tony comes in will have a huge impact. I think Solanke could. I think Solanke could if we get the right service to him. But just because I put him third doesn't mean I don't think he might not do a good job. But my preference would have been... What about you, Sim? You the same three as me or are you the other way around?
I think Gyökeres is a more fancy name. And I do think Tony probably has a bit more all-round to his game. So... but I think Solanke is... I honestly think the difference is minimal, to be honest. I probably would side with what you're saying, actually. I think I would probably put the same three, Gyökeres, Tony, and Solanke. But I also think that I also think that Solanke could easily be better than the other two, for sure. Like, you put him in a better team. Also, I think Solanke is probably, you could argue, the least risk. You could very much argue he's the least risk out of all three because Tony's not coming into the season with that great form after he did come back from his ban and he'd had an initial bit of form but tailed off quite badly for the last 10 games or so of the season. And Gyökeres hasn't played in the Premier League and Solanke has, albeit there's no reason why I can see Gyökeres struggling in the Premier League. But Solanke we know for a fact can do it in the Premier League and Gyökeres we don't know for sure. But just a quick one, though, in terms of the profile of striker, do you think it's the right thing to be going for a more of a target man? Or do you think someone like a David or an Openda would be a better fit for what we want?
I do believe with the way we're playing, especially with one up top, hold-up play is vital. And when we get it up there, being able to keep the ball up there and not lose it so easily like we did last season is going to be key. So if I had to choose a striker, whoever it may be, what profile would I go for? Target man or the other version? I would say we're going with the right profile.
Yeah, and I would also argue that if we need a run-in behind striker, we kind of have it in Son if need be. He can also fill in there. So we kind of have that already. I know some people don't like Sonny up front, but we look, he got 17 goals last season and he didn't do that because he can't play the role. He can. And just because we need a target man doesn't mean Son can never do that role again. It just means if we need him if we need that kind of striker, he can fill in. And then in the other games, like a lot of the games last season where he didn't do as well, we have someone like Solanke who will probably start most games. Go on, you want to say no? Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Let's move on to the next one. We'll talk about Richarlison because obviously apparently this deal hinges on Richarlison leaving. According to Gary Jacob, he says that Solanke's deal would be funded by Richarlison's exit after Al Ahly's indicated interest. Richarlison has appeared to have changed his mind about moving abroad. Ben Jacob says Al Ahly's interest in Richarlison is genuine, as previously revealed. No bid yet, but Saudi deal makers aware of Tottenham's 60 million asking price. However, Paul O'Keefe says Richarlison does not want to go to Saudi, which would then, I guess, maybe put some spanner in the works when it comes to a striker deal. For you, should a deal for a Solanke be dependent on Richarlison leaving? Or if Richarlison does leave, for you, do we need another two strikers?
Yeah.
Or do we have enough cover with maybe Son and what we've seen from Decky in the number 9 to cover that, and maybe Will Lancashire as well, to cover that striker role if Solanke does get an injury and we do sell Richarlison?
So first of all, obviously, the question that the fact that the deal is apparently led to believe that it's hinging on Richarlison just infuriates me. Infuriates me beyond belief, and people will know why. So I'm not going to go down that road. It's fairly clear. With this stadium, with the revenue coming in and everything, this should not be an option. We shouldn't again. But it sounds like buying to sell, which I'm hoping is not the case. Whether I still think Richarlison is going, I said 2 months ago, didn't I? I told you I'd heard something. I told you the reasons why. I still stand by. I think he will be gone. What I don't understand is people are saying because he said he doesn't want to go to Saudi or he's not. Whether that's true or not is disputable. But I'm sure if Tottenham Hotspur say, listen, we are accepted a bid from you from there, you can go and talk to them. I'm sure when they have the conversation and they drop the wages, his maybe not wanting to go might become, oh, hell yeah, I'm coming. And can't blame him for the silly wages that will be offered to him. We can't keep him fit. I think if Solanke does come in, he's going to get told, we can't depend on your fitness. So Solanke is going to be number 1. Is he going to want to be a bit part? So I think he goes, but I do think if he comes in, this is where I go. I want Jonathan David to come in. Should Richarlison go, because he offers versatility as a forward or on the flanks. But yeah, I really hope that this deal, whether it goes through or not, isn't dependable on getting Richarlison out.
Do you think it's too much having a Solanke and Richarlison? Do you think we would have to get rid of one, or do you think that Richarlison is or a backup striker is definitely needed? Like, what would you what if we went into the season with Solanke, Son, Kulusevski, and Lancashire as our options? Is that enough for that? I mean, that's a lot of options. I mean, it is a lot.
It is, and what I will say with you, Simeon, is obviously you and me on a regular basis, Kulusevski gets brought into discussions, and we've had mixed opinions and mixed viewpoints. And as I said, I think he's had a great pre-season playing in the centre. He looks a different player, and the criticism I've given him playing out wide, I stand by, but he is different going forward. But I think we need 2 strikers. You look at great teams in the past. When we played a 4-4-2, it wasn't just 2 strikers. There was a third, maybe a fourth in some cases. And if we're still playing with a 1, I want us to have a strong striker to be able to replace him, not move Son out of his best position into there. Could Lancashire be it? Could Lancashire do it? Maybe. But obviously untried, untested properly in the big leagues. So I would want to see another striker behind him to challenge Solanke, put pressure on Solanke, and should Solanke get injured, suspended, whatever, there is someone that can stand in and do the job.
But you wouldn't say Will Lancashire is ready for that role yet?
I think he can have a bit part, and I think he can have some form of impact. But that's a lot of pressure to put on 19, 20, and say, right.
It is, but you've also got Son and Decky as well there. So yeah. I mean, they're also options. So I can understand that maybe if you can say it's a lot of pressure, but if it's not working out, you still got other avenues to go down potentially.
Yeah, the way you look at it and talk like that, it's 6 and 1 and half a dozen the other, isn't it? It's preferable personal choice. And some people will say, yep, that's enough because these players can play there at a push or they can do a job. I would want someone personally that I know plays up front, and that is his position, and he can do the job. But yeah, it may be 6 and 1 and half a dozen of the other.
If we were to not sign another striker, but we did sign a right winger, which I'll get into in a minute, would that be sufficient? Would that be acceptable for off the forward to complete the forward line for the time being?
So you say with Solanke there or no Solanke?
So let's say we sell Richarlison, we sign Solanke, and we also sign a winger. Or we don't sign another striker.
I think for Solanke, it's imperative a quality winger comes in that can get the service into him, especially aerially. We have been Brennan Johnson, Werner, all of them hit the first man, or it doesn't get into the danger area often enough. So Solanke came in and a top draw winger that I would be okay with for sure.
Well, looking at wingers, Matt Lord does say that Tottenham do hold an interest in Pedro Neto, but are still yet to make a bid. There's still been a lot of talk. A few ITKs have been floating out the idea that Neto's still very much a player Tottenham are looking at. Obviously, a player we've mentioned, and a bad injury record. But if Neto was the right winger we were to sign, and if we had a front three of Son, Solanke, and Neto, how does that stack up against the teams we're challenging?
I love the sound of it. I think Neto is an absolute game changer. Now, we spoke about this yesterday, and any time any channel speaks about Neto, obviously it splits opinions because of his injury record, and I get that. And he has had a bad injury record, but I think this guy is a game changer when fit. I love watching him. He is so ruthless. He's so direct. He is a really, really good player. Now, as I was saying to Ben yesterday, Sim, I'll see what you've got to say. I think, like you were just talking about the players that can play centre forward, should it be Solanke and there's people there? I think Neto at Wolves is such a big star to them and like the player that sometimes when he's coming back from injury, they bring him back so quick. And it could have a major effect on his recovery, keeping his match fitness, because there's so much pressure on him to be fit. Now, if he comes in and he does pick up an injury, which he will at some point, I think there's enough cover of Brennan Johnson. Could Kulu go out there? Could Porro be moved forward? And Spencer, Mikey, there's another one. So it's like, should he pick up an injury? Are Spurs in the place where they have to completely rush him back? And who knows, with the medical guys gone, maybe that'll help with the new guy that comes in. These are all ifs, coulda, woulda, shouldas. But if someone could guarantee me that Neto is fit 75, 80% of the time, 100% I take that. 100% I take that. It's always the problem with his fitness. And that's a question that's going to be answered if he comes, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think sometimes there's a risk versus reward calculation with these things, and Neto is such a perfect fit for us that I think if we can get a good deal for him, if we can get a deal which, obviously I don't think I'd overpay for him. If you're looking at paying over 60 million, I think maybe the risk might be too much that he might be injured. But if we're looking at maybe a deal, let's say 45 million plus appearance fee and add-ons, if he makes a certain amount of appearances, there's add-ons there, then I think it could be worth it, because the upside is you just got a perfect winger for your team and you up your levels. And the downside is, yes, maybe he plays and gets a few injuries, but you got to remember last season, Brennan was developing really well. We do have players like Mikey Moore there who can play there. Decky can fill in there, as you said. Werner maybe can fill in there some games. So it's not like we're completely lost for options without Neto there, and we still finished 5th last season with our current wingers. So this is supposed to be someone who can close the gap, and if he can, even if he's fit for like 15 games, that can close the gap. Like, imagine last season of the games we lost, if Neto played in 10 of those games, we might not have lost to those 10 games, and that would really improve our league position. So I feel like it'd be worth the risk if for the right fee. I feel like, and I think, yes, those injuries will be a concern, but obviously if he passes a medical and we decide that this is a player who could potentially get over those injury problems, he's still young, he's 24, then it could be worth it. There are some of the best wingers of all time have had injury problems, but they're still worth having around. I think of players like Ian Robin, who his whole career was plagued with injuries. But he's a player that Bayern Munich relied on year in, year out, because he was just that good when he was fit, that he's just worth having around. So I feel like Neto might be, I don't know if he's as good as Robin, but I feel like Neto, in terms of what he could bring to us, he just might be that good that he's just worth having around.
I think the thing we've got to look at this with Neto, and the same with Solanke, is that £60 million price. Is Solanke worth 65? Disputable. People will say yes, people will say no. Neto, if 100% fit, is worth more than 60 million any day of the week. If his fitness wasn't as bad as it was all day long, it's finding that figure where people say, yeah, do you know what? With his injury records, that's a good shout. Whether players go in exchange, whether it is laddered with appearance fees or targets, we'll have to see. But if you said 60 million right now for Neto, I still think it's too much because of his injuries. But if we can resolve his injuries, my God, we're in business with him.
Absolutely. But it's easy. It's also easy to forget that, last season was a lot of players' first seasons under Ange, and a lot of players did pick up injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So would there be an acclimatization period, even if we could get over those injury problems? Could he get even, have more problems getting injured just because he's acclimatizing to Ange's football? I mean, you could argue that. But how wingers play under Ange's system, I think Neto is just so tailor-made for it.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we're looking at some other players like let's say Johan Bakayoko, or I know Douye, I don't think he's moved yet. I mean, maybe they would be better fits because they fit the system and they're not as injury prone. But Neto, we know, is proven as well. He can play in that system. So for me, obviously, the finances have got to work for us. But if they do, I would be super excited about that move. Next up, we're going to be talking about Ollie Skipp. Matt Law has done another update on Ollie Skipp. He says, Ollie Skipp has attracted interest from all three of the clubs promoted to the Premier League last season, Leicester, Ipswich and Southampton, and is expected to leave Tottenham. We still have this, issue with the homegrown quota going into next season. Which is why, according to Paul O'Keefe, Tottenham do actually want him to stick around, but apparently Skipp is the one who wants to leave to get some game time. He just wants to play. So how do we resolve this issue? Is it just about sucking it up, letting Skipp leave, and basically having a bit of a smaller squad potentially, or do we stand firm and tell Skipp, look, we need you here. You're going to be part of the squad, and we'll try and get you more game time. How do we resolve that?
Do you bring an Alfie Devine in? And obviously, people know I'm biased when it comes to that man. I think he could do a better job than Skipp. Personally, that's the way you can get him out. We do have the English coming through in that crop of youngsters that can be registered. Alfie obviously can be, I believe. It's a way, but I think for Skipp, the best thing for both club and him is to let him have a move, because he doesn't fit Ange's style, does he? I just can't see. We tried him as centre back, not that in pre-season, not that he was going to be a centre back, but I just don't see how he fits in that midfield three. It may be a struggle for him to get game time, so I think it's time to cut our cloth accordingly and say, Ollie, thank you for your service, thank you for being at the going through the youth academy, but now it's time for you to have your career.
So if that is the case, would you say we need to go get Carl Walker-Peters in through the door, or is it just a case of we're just going to have a smaller squad, and that could limit who we can sign?
You look at, you say Carl Walker-Peters, obviously the one people keep talking about, should it be a midfielder, is obviously Marcus Edwards. This is I am torn whether we go back in for him or if we can promote from the youngsters. Because as you saw in very close quarters, some of those youngsters have really given Ange some thinking, whether it be a loan, a sell, or even, do you know what, maybe he can do something in the first team, or that player. I don't know, but I'm looking at this on his Skipp side for the player kind of side and what's best for him. And I think it's only fair if there's options to get money for him and let him play some first team football, go give it to him.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's hard to envisage him getting much game time next season. The only place that we could potentially get in game time is actually, surprisingly, probably where he played at the back end of last season, which is at backup left back, because we still don't have one of those. Or Gary Jacob is saying that we are still in the market for a cover for the left back position. Maybe if Skipp stays, that's where he's going to play, because he did impress in a couple of occasions there last season. Is that something you'd be open to, keeping him as a backup left back?
No, I mean, we've looked at it, and obviously we've seen James Donnelly do it, seen Jed Spence do it.
If it's something the club were considering, you'd probably think that he would have played there a bit in pre-season.
Exactly, and then obviously we've also got you got Destiny. We've seen Jamie Donnelly do it. We've seen Mickey van der Ven do it. So there are so many options. I just don't see, and the fact that we played him at centre back rather than that kind of showed even more. So yeah, I don't see him playing there left back.
Fair enough. Last story to talk about is Manor Solomon. We was brought earlier today that Tottenham are open to letting Solomon go on loan. Gary Jacob has confirmed the news, saying that Manor Solomon is expected to leave the club on loan, although apparently he does say Tottenham aren't interested in a permanent at the moment, only a loan deal, with Paul O'Keefe saying that clubs from Spain and Germany are looking for a potential loan deal for Manor Solomon. It's not quite worked out for Manor, has it? Obviously, we've signed Werner. Sonny's now moving back out to the left, which leaves Solomon out in the cold a bit. He's a player who obviously signed last season, only played a handful of games, then got a serious injury. And now he's looking out the door. To be honest, didn't see a minute out in Korea on the preseason, which probably shows me where Ange's head is at with the whole thing. He's a player, I believe. I think we confirmed him after Ange was through the door, but he was a player who was heavily linked with us before Ange even signed. So it's probably one we were lining up. What's your thoughts on that whole situation? Is it one where we haven't given him a fair chance? Should he be part of the team next season? Or is it one where it was just a mistake and we have to think of how we can cut our losses with it?
Yeah, with me, obviously, he had the bad injuries. I think that, do you remember, Simeon, you and me did the Sheffield United watch along, that incredible moment when Kulusevski got the last minute winner? In that first half, I thought he was the one man that was taking it to Sheffield United and using his pace and directness. He'd obviously then gone on to get his injury, and it has taken him a long, long time to get back. Yes, he's been back in training, but he had a couple of opportunities in the home friendlies, didn't he? And he did not take them. And I think a loan move is what he's needed. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to get regular minutes, get his fitness levels up, get his confidence back. And I can't see where he's going to feature in this Spurs team this season. So getting him out the door, getting him on loan, and we see where he is next year. But I think a loan works out best for club and player.
Yeah, I agree. I predicted at the end of last season that we would loan him out, because I feel like there is a potentially 15 to 20 million pound winger there, in my opinion, if he stays fit and shows what he can do. We've seen he does have quality. His problem is he's been injured. So I feel like Tottenham, they gave him a 4-year deal, didn't they? So if they were to sell him this summer permanently, I don't think they'll get a figure that they would be happy with. I can't see a team paying more than like 5 million right now, just because of his injury problems. And as well, he's done okay in the Premier League, but I don't think he's proven that he's like definitely going to be a brilliant winger in this league just yet. As much as he's shown glimpses, I don't think we've seen consistent good performances from him yet in this division. I mean, mostly due to injury more than anything, but still haven't seen it. So I don't think teams are going to be desperate to get him through the door. But if he was to go on loan, show what he can do, then next season there are two options for us. Either we send Werner back from his loan and Solomon can come in and play that role that Werner's playing. Or if Werner's very good and we're happy to sell Solomon, we could maybe get some more money for him. We can maybe get that 15 to 20 million that he's worth, because he's shown his worth out on loan if he goes to a club where he plays. Obviously, if he goes on loan and doesn't do well, then he probably wasn't worth sticking around anyway. So, I mean, there's nothing to lose, I think. I think loan is the best option. I think once we signed Werner on loan, that was pretty much it for Solomon. I didn't see where he was going to fit in the squad. So, I mean, but it does come to think like why we signed him in the first place. I know he was a free transfer, but if we have so little belief that after one season seen him for 5 games, we're already ready to kind of get rid of him. We're already ready to. We'd rather loan Werner for another year than trust him, and he's a lot younger than Werner. It does question. I mean, I questioned it at the time when we signed him, and as time goes on, it made less and less sense why we have signed him. But I still do think there's a good player in there. Whether it's a player good enough to take Tottenham to the next level, I'm skeptical about. We'll have to wait and see. But I do think he's definitely a Premier League level winger. But I just don't know if he's a top 6 level winger. That's what I'm still skeptical about.
Yeah, I'm completely with you with everything you said. I mean, obviously the option as well that you have is Werner doesn't do well, or we don't sign him permanently, and and Solomon may have a good loan, and we get rid of both. Or I say,
Yeah.
I mean, so there's so many different ways you can look at this. But getting back to the main point of this with Solomon, I think he needs to go somewhere where he's going to play regular first team football, build that confidence up, build that fitness up. And we've heard that there's foreign clubs. Maybe that's what he needs, and he's not going to get regular minutes here. And I can't see where is it Carabao Cup, is it Europa League? Let him go out and build up again, and then who knows? We'll review it in a year's time.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best course of action as well. Just the last thing then, just to touch on the window at the moment. We are now under 2 weeks. 10 days from the start of the season? 10 days, because this is Wednesday now, and we start the season on Monday, so maybe like 11 days till the start of the season. We've still only really signed Archie Gray permanently, Werner on loan. A lot to do before the start. If we are going to be ready for the opening game, there's a lot to do. I mean, at the moment, it looks like we're probably going to have a lot of these signings are going to have to happen while the season started.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the window at the moment? Do you feel like there's still enough time to say we can have a good window? Like if we do bring in the likes of Solanke and Neto and maybe another one, potentially a left back or a central midfielder, is there enough? Is it like if we do that, regardless of even if it's just before the deadline, can we say it's a good window, or are you starting to get a bit frustrated with how this window has gone?
I could ask you that with the 50 Shades of Simeon during the window from where it starts. Listen, the outgoings, I'm not going to. I will say well done to the club, well done to Daniel Levy, and well done to the people that have got these players off the book. Whether it be for good money, we've not really had it, but we needed these players out. Not so many of the first. Obviously, we've got to get rid of Emerson, still available to be going. Other first teamers that are still there could be gone. But with outgoings, we have done extremely well, and that has to be praised. On a number wise, getting them in. Archie Gray, delighted. Bergvall, January, obviously. I'm frustrated that here we are again going into a season without a full set, or not a full set, but more players in the door. Like we said, Solanke, why wasn't he bought if he's not in the Euros? Again, it's Tottenham doing their things, but going at the last minute, which, like I said, personal preference, I'd love to see my players on the tour as much time as they can. But whilst there's time, win the window, there's always time to get business done, and then we'll see what it is. But we're looking at it. Van der Ven was signed just before the Bayern Munich, the Shakhtar Donetsk game, and was at that ground, had a week of training, went into Brentford, and look how incredible that man did. So there are hope that we could sign players late and they can slot right in and do exceedingly well. But I am a person that would always like their players and business done early. Like Andrew said, like Poch has said, but whilst the window is open, you can't really say anything, can you? I just hope by the end of the window we're saying, do you know what? It was worth the wait because we waited to get the right player, not rushed to get the wrong one.
Yeah, for me, if we can sign a striker, a winger, and another defender before the end of the window, I'll be happy. I'm a bit concerned that we're 7th of August now. Are we leaving ourselves a bit too much to do? Can we get these signings in quickly and fast and get them acclimatized? I hope so. I think there is still time, but time is definitely not our friend, I would say, at this point. We definitely need to get a move on. And I do think we can still have a good window and we can still get what we need. But as well, another question is, a striker, a winger, a defender, that's good. But going into the season, a number 6 was very high on a lot of people's priorities, and that's gone, and yours as well. That's gone very quiet at the moment. So if we're not signing a 6, how big of a hole is that still in the squad?
Only time will tell us. Archie Gray can go there. I have been impressed thoroughly with Archie. Yeah, the last game against Bayern was probably the worst one, or we'll say worse, the least memorable performance. He came up against real quality, but what I've seen from him, I have the greatest confidence in him that he'll go on to shine. Will he play that position? Will he be able to, with Mickey and Romero behind him, will he have the confidence and security to know I've got 2 rocks behind me so I can be a bit more expansive? Only time will tell. But right now, I said number 6 was prior to going into the window. Right now, it's all about the striker. We have to get a striker.
All right. Well, look, Brian, thank you as always for your time on today's Tottenham Update. If you like what you see from Brian Daigle, please, everyone, go show him some love and go and subscribe to Tottenham on Tour. They are growing very, very quickly, as they should be. So please go and show him some love and go check him out there if you want to see more of Brian Daigle. That is it for today's Tottenham Update. We'll see you all very, very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on,
Spurs.